It's been more than a decade since Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370 vanished without a trace, remaining one of the greatest aviation mysteries of all time. With so little physical evidence, countless theories have emerged to explain what happened, from an onboard fire to cyber hijacking, to even claims that the plane slipped into a wormhole. But with every theory comes one big question. What do we actually know? And what is pure speculation? In this video, we're breaking down some of the most talked about MH370 theories, and whether any of them truly hold up against the facts. With so many theories, it's impossible to cover them all in one video, but a few stand out for the evidence behind them. The first, and one of the most widely discussed, is the possibility that the captain may have deliberately diverted the plane on the night MH370 disappeared. Evidence for this theory dates back to before takeoff. The day before the flight, Captain Zaharie Ahmad Shah's personal oxygen tanks were topped up. These tanks provided the crew with a much longer supply of oxygen than the 15 minutes available to passengers in an emergency. While filling the tanks is a routine safety procedure, the timing has raised suspicion, fueling theories that he may have been planning for incapacitation or a deliberate act. From takeoff until the point where MH370 disappeared, everything appeared normal. Well, almost. A transmission from Captain Zaharie Ahmad Shah to ATC at 1 hour, 7 minutes and 55 seconds raised some suspicion.
370 maintaining level 350.
Malaysian 370, climb flight level 350.
370 maintaining level 350.
Yet without being prompted to report any change, he confirmed the altitude again.
370 maintaining level 350.
A minor deviation from protocol, but one that aviation analysts continue to highlight. During these crucial 6 minutes, it's believed the captain may have locked the first officer out of the cockpit. The reinforced cockpit door, designed after 9/11 to keep intruders out, could have ensured that once closed, no one could get back in. This may explain why the radio was unattended and Zaharie felt the need to confirm his current altitude.
370 maintaining level 350.
A tragic example of such a scenario is Germanwings Flight 9525 in 2015. After the captain briefly stepped out, the co-pilot locked the door and set a controlled descent into the French Alps, leaving the crew and passengers powerless to intervene. Once MH370 approached waypoint Igari, it is believed that Captain Zaharie Ahmad Shah turned off the aircraft's transponder, depressurized the cabin, and manually made a U-turn back toward the Malay Peninsula. A turn that investigators later concluded could not have been done using the autopilot in that exact manner. The U-turn is strange enough on its own, but where it was performed raises even more suspicion. The maneuver happened precisely during the handoff between Malaysian and Vietnamese air traffic control, a moment when the plane was least monitored. And the new flight path skirted just outside restricted Thai military airspace, almost as if it were intentionally avoiding detection. MH370 disappeared from civilian radar at 1:22 a.m. However, Malaysian military radar continued to track the aircraft for another hour. Before it turned north towards the Strait of Malacca, something strange happened. At 1:52, First Officer Farik Abdul Hamid's cell phone briefly connected to a tower in Penang. While no call was attempted, for such a connection to occur, the aircraft would likely have been flying below 10,000 feet, a descent that has led some to speculate there may have been a loss of cabin pressure or a power issue on board. Some investigators also suggest that the first officer may have been trying to use his phone against a cabin window after losing access to the cockpit, highlighting the unusual and deliberate actions during this critical phase of the flight. Some also theorize the turn over Penang was premeditated, as it was the captain's hometown. At around 2:22, MH370 was last detected by Malaysian military radar near Pulau Perak in the Strait of Malacca, after which it vanished from all radar. After that, the only source of information came from the aircraft's SATCOM system, which periodically sends electronic handshakes to an Inmarsat satellite 35,000 feet above Earth. Here's where things get even stranger. Shortly before sending its final ACARS message at 1:07, a system which automatically transmits flight data such as position, speed, and altitude to the airline, MH370's SATCOM system mysteriously went offline, remaining inactive until it sent a full logon request at 2:25. This is highly unusual, as the system normally stays powered throughout the flight. SATCOM relies on continuous electrical power, so an unexpected shutdown could indicate a significant power interruption. Interestingly, if the system is turned off manually from the cockpit, it sends a signal to the satellite indicating a deliberate shutdown, a trail of evidence Zaharie may have tried to avoid. Although the aircraft could continue flying without full power, extended operation was not without risk. Critical systems, like the fans that cool cockpit computers, rely on full electrical power, and overheating could become a serious concern. Zaharie may have restored power after turning SATCOM off to avoid serious failure, possibly unaware that doing so would trigger a reconnection to the satellite. This explains why the system went silent and then reconnected while MH370 continued its mysterious flight into the southern Indian Ocean. Further investigations focused on Captain Zaharie's home flight simulator, featured on his YouTube channel. Data recovered from a deleted hard drive reveals routes matching MH370, with 7 coordinates spanning Kuala Lumpur, the Strait of Malacca, the Bay of Bengal, and the southern Indian Ocean. The data was saved a month before the flight, but it's unclear if all points are from a single session. Some experts suggest the simulator may reflect MH150, a routine flight he conducted from Kuala Lumpur to Jeddah on February 4, 2014. If so, the data could be unrelated to MH370, or it could indicate Zaharie initially planned a different route before switching to MH370, raising further questions about his intentions. A thorough investigation of his private life was also conducted, and no financial or psychological issues raised any concern. It was later discovered that Zaharie Ahmad Shah did support the opposition leader Anwar Ibrahim. However, no evidence was found that Zaharie's political views were directly related to the plane's disappearance. Although many consider the captain's deliberate diversion the most plausible explanation, others argue the answer to MH370's disappearance may not lie in the cockpit at all. If the captain wasn't responsible, then who was? That question opens the door to far more dramatic theories. Independent investigator Jeff Wise, who made a feature in the Netflix documentary MH370, The Plane That Disappeared, put forth a controversial theory. He claims that Russian operatives may have hijacked the aircraft by accessing the avionics bay through a hatch in the forward cabin, allowing them to seize control of MH370's systems and fly the aircraft north instead of south. According to the Inmarsat data provided in the initial investigation, MH370 flew south towards the southern Indian Ocean after its final turn near the Andaman Islands. For several hours, the aircraft sent several handshakes to an Inmarsat satellite until running out of fuel. Although the Inmarsat data has been widely accepted and influenced search efforts, Jeff Wise has suggested that someone could have accessed MH370's electronic bay and manipulated the satellite data unit to falsify the SATCOM handshake signals. According to him, this could make the data appear to show a southern route and crash in the Indian Ocean, even if the plane actually flew north towards Kazakhstan. He points to the unusual reboot of the signal after other communications were cut as evidence that the dataset is potentially unreliable, arguing that any tampering would likely leave imperfections rather than a perfectly cleaned-up record. A key question, however, is whether a 777 could realistically be controlled from the electronics bay. This compartment, located beneath the first-class cabin, houses critical avionics systems, but contains no flight controls, throttle, or rudder mechanisms. While some speculate that a sophisticated hacker could interfere with the flight control computers remotely, aviation engineers note that the Boeing 777's fly-by-wire makes such control extraordinarily difficult without cockpit access or specialized equipment. Jeff Wise consulted Mohd Fouad Shahrooji, Crisis Director for MH370 and MH17. Shahrooji confirmed that while the avionics bay allows someone to disable the transponder and communications, it is impossible to fly the aircraft from there. He prefaced his opinion by acknowledging that he isn't an aviation expert, leaving a small margin for uncertainty. Overall, controlling the plane from the electronics bay remains highly implausible, making Wise's northern route hypothesis questionable. The official investigation concluded that MH370 flew somewhere along the 7th arc, a ring of possible positions based on the last satellite handshake and burst time offset. The arc spans latitudes from Central Asia to the southern Indian Ocean, without specifying a precise location or direction. While the 7th arc allows for a northern route in theory, BTO data, Doppler shift analysis, aircraft performance, and fuel constraints strongly indicate a southern track. In addition, the recovered debris, such as the flaperon found on Reunion Island in 2015, also supports a southern Indian Ocean flight path. Even if we set aside the evidence pointing to a southern flight path, MH370 flying north remains highly improbable. MH370 would have to fly through the airspace of several countries, including India and China, making it highly likely that the aircraft would have been detected. Even if we imagine it somehow reached Kazakhstan, a critical question remains. Why? Why would Russia or anyone else remotely hijack the plane and not claim responsibility? The absence of both evidence and motive leaves Jeff Wise's northern route theory exactly what it is, a theory. While the northern route theory stretches plausibility, the next theory breaks it completely. Independent investigator Ashton Forbes claims that MH370 didn't simply vanish, it was taken. And this leaked footage may show those final moments. Forbes argues that the leaked footage was recorded by an MQ-9 Reaper drone, positioned roughly 20,000 feet above MH370, and while filming with its underwing camera systems. In the corner of the screen, the footage displays the label NROL-22, also known as USA-184, a U.S. signals intelligence satellite run by the National Reconnaissance Office, which Forbes suggests may have been involved in capturing or relaying the imagery. In the video, 3 objects can be seen circling the aircraft. Forbes describes these as orbs that use magnetism to lock onto the plane. He claims that once the lock is complete, the orbs rotate clockwise in a vertical pattern, at which point the plane appears to vanish. A flash of light is visible during this event, which Forbes says is consistent with theoretical wormhole behavior, light not normally visible to the human eye. He also points to how the flash illuminates surrounding clouds as evidence that the footage is authentic, though this raises a question: if the light is supposedly invisible, how can it produce such a clear visual effect in the surrounding clouds? A second leaked video captured in thermal imagery is used to reinforce this claim. In the thermal footage, the flash appears black instead of white, something Forbes argues is inconsistent with a heat-based explosion and more indicative of a non-thermal event. He believes this supports the idea that the disappearance was not the result of a conventional mechanical failure or detonation, but something far more unusual. As for where MH370 might have been teleported, Forbes points to Diego Garcia, a remote military base in the middle of the Indian Ocean, suggesting the location could be used to protect sensitive technology from falling into the wrong hands. Notably, there were 20 Freescale semiconductor employees on board, 12 from Malaysia and 8 from China, who may have been carrying sensitive technology, providing a possible motive for targeting the flight. Forbes believes the footage was not recorded spontaneously, but as part of a deliberate operation. Seeking answers, he contacted Sierra Nevada Corporation, the primary developer and integrator behind the Gorgon Stare surveillance system used on MQ-9 Reaper drones. The company supplies the multi-camera optics, onboard processing systems, and software that enable wide-area motion imagery and real-time intelligence transmission. According to Forbes, the company did not respond to his written messages, ended multiple phone calls abruptly, and later removed public references to the technology from sections of its website. Although the core of Forbes' theory focuses on the final moments of the flight, he believes the initial diversion may have been caused by a fire linked to the 487 pounds, 221 kilograms, of lithium-ion batteries in the cargo hold, and oil rig worker Michael McKay both reported seeing a jumbo jet flying unusually low, glowing bright orange on the night the plane disappeared. Yet the distance between their sightings raises many unanswered questions. Why did MH370 first turn left, then north, and finally south? And perhaps most puzzling of all, could a plane realistically keep flying for hours while on fire? Like Jeff Wise's theory, the pieces of debris that have been found challenge Forbes' teleportation claim. However, Forbes argues, like many others, that the absence of wreckage in Australia, combined with every piece recovered in Africa, suggests a staged event rather than the result of natural ocean drift. Many believe the lack of a distress call from MH370 points to a sudden depressurization that incapacitated the crew, causing the aircraft to continue flying until fuel exhaustion. A similar situation occurred aboard Helios Flight 522 in 2005. About an hour into that flight, the aircraft experienced a loss of cabin pressure and continued on a straight path until it ran out of fuel. However, the ghost flight theory doesn't hold up for MH370. The flight path included several unexplained turns and altitude changes, which completely debunk this idea. If the crew had been incapacitated, the plane would have continued flying on autopilot along a straight trajectory until fuel exhaustion. Some believe the only reliable information about MH370 comes from its departure from Kuala Lumpur International Airport until it initially disappeared near waypoint Igari. According to this theory, everything after that is part of a massive government cover-up. Proponents suggest that while flying over the South China Sea, MH370 was deliberately shut down during a military exercise. While this idea is theoretically possible, especially considering that MH17 was shot down over Ukraine just 3 months later, no wreckage or traces of MH370 were ever found during the initial searches in the South China Sea. After more than 10 years, dozens of investigative reports, 2 major seedbed search operations, and over 30 pieces of suspected debris, MH370 remains a mystery suspended between fact, theory, and possibility. Each explanation, whether rooted in technical failure, human intent, or something far more unusual, reveals just how complex the disappearance truly is. There is evidence pointing to a controlled diversion, there are gaps that raise questions about outside interference, and there are claims that challenge the limits of technology, physics, and what we believe is possible. But for every theory with compelling arguments, there are unanswered questions. The closer we look, the more MH370 seems to exist in a paradox. Too much data to call it a simple disappearance, yet not enough to point decisively to any single explanation. Now that you've heard the main theories, which seems most plausible to you? A deliberate act from the cockpit, a hijacking, a catastrophic malfunction, or something entirely unknown? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and more importantly, explain why. One thing is certain, the story isn't finished. With advances in technology, improved sonar mapping, and renewed interest from privately funded search missions, hope remains alive. After a search earlier this year, the Malaysian government resumed the search on the 30th of December, 2025. Ocean Infinity is scheduled to return, this time exploring previously untouched terrain, with what many hope will be high odds of success. There will definitely be a video about the new search in the future, and if you don't want to miss it, consider subscribing to the channel.